Hey everyone, we're talking today a little bit about the world of Gen AI or AI. Not like it's not been talked about a lot, but we figured since we're an AI company, we'd like to join the conversation. So, with that, a quick introduction. Ethan Wood. I am the head of marketing for Eternal Technologies, and I brought on the founder and CEO, John. John, talk a little bit about your company. First, I want to hear for the audience. I want you to tell the backstory. That's the one thing I always think. I always ask people that own companies, like, why did you build this place? Why? Why do we exist?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ethan. Good to see y'all. I'm John Hanby, founder and CEO of Eternal Technologies. Ethan and I actually met because he was a former customer. We won him over, we hit it off, and here we are today. So thrilled to have you here, Ethan, as well. It's been a
Thank
blast
you.
working with you. So let's wind the clock very far back. Let's go to when I was 6 years old. So I actually
Gen AI wasn't even a thing when you were
Oh,
six.
no, it wasn't. I mean, I'm pretty young too. So I was 6 years old. I was big into Harry Potter, and I discovered this thing called movie making, and it was an exciting time for me. I learned a program. My mom was very technically savvy back in the day, and so she taught me a program called Macromedia Director, which is an animation program, and it kickstarted this lifelong love of producing, movies and films. And through the years, as I got older, I went through school and I ended up producing many different short films as school projects, video essays and things of that nature when I was young. And I had an amazing set of teachers that kind of allowed me to think outside the box, do projects creatively. And when I was in high school, I thought I was going to be an electrical engineer. Loved math, loved physics, and I never had the career discussion with my parents. My dad worked at Dell for about a decade, so I like to say I got my MBA sitting on the floor of his office playing with trucks while he would be on Dell conference calls because I learned so much from him about that. And being in that world of Dell, of course, the story of Michael Dell was always front in my mind. And so I said, man, it would be so cool to be able to do something like that one day. So I went down this path of electrical engineering and computer building because I was actually building my own computers specifically for the purpose of producing super high-end, complex special effects and visual effects for my film projects, which was my passion in my free time. And when I was a sophomore in high school, I kind of had this epiphany moment where I thought, hey, maybe I don't want to be an electrical engineer anymore. Maybe I want to be a filmmaker. And so I had a very scary conversation with my dad. He handled it in the best way possible. I was walking with him one day outside. I said, Dad, I don't think I want to be an electrical engineer. And I had no idea what he was going to say and react with. But he said, John Byron, if you want to be a filmmaker, you pursue your passion. And I said, yeah, I'll be supportive of whatever you end up deciding, which is the best thing that a dad could say. And so I did. And the funny part of the story that I didn't used to tell, but it's very applicable now, is he said, who knows, maybe one day you'll start a software company. And this is not made up. He's just like, visionary in that way. And the funny part is I said, no, Dad, I have no good software ideas. And at the time I didn't. So I ended up realizing I could get paid doing what I love with this filmmaking thing. I founded my film production company when I was a junior in high school. I ran that for about a decade through the rest of high school, through the rest of college, and for a couple of years after, it became number one here in Austin for corporate film production work. I also did a bunch of like music videos because that's what I really like. Not like people playing instruments, but like beautiful, huge cinematic, like the epic, true cinema music videos. And super successful at that. Had a lot of fun doing it too. Actually got to work with my favorite band of all time, which was pretty awesome as well. But it wasn't scaling the way that I wanted it to. So this was around 2017 timeframe when deep fakes and synthetic content were just starting to become a thing. And being in that executive communications and corporate communications world doing, C-suite level video content, I saw that there was a huge opportunity that in the next couple of years, we could realistically synthesize a virtual digital version of a person so that instead of having to, spend over 50% of the production time setting up the equipment, moving to the set, building out the set, having the person sit down and record it, and then unpacking all of that equipment and having to edit the video, you could instead type into a text box what you wanted the person to say, and they would say it. And that was like just such an exciting idea for me because, as somebody who was running a lot of these productions, it was very frustrating to do all that logistics work. So I said, if we could figure out a way to build something that could be forward looking into this space of what generative AI now is called in regard to video, that could be a really big deal. And so I think we got super lucky, also made some really good decisions along the way. But we ended up building a platform that was specifically focused around streamlining the production process for video content as it related to this new wave of synthetic video with people, with the real strategy being doing it in a way that was safe, secure, enterprise compliant, and scalable so that it could actually be something that could be adopted by the largest companies in the world in an ethical manner, right? Really taking this technology of a deep fake, which still to this day is a little bit scary, unknown. We're not sure about the political implications of it. Other, just general questionability on what is it like to have a synthetic person versus a real person and things like that. But really building as much of this trust and credibility and positive intent into this process as possible. And that's what we ended up building. And we showed that to some customers, Dell being one of them, Ethan being one of them. They loved it. They thought it was super cool. And we started expanding out into other media types as well. And now fast forward, we're about 6.5 years into this AI journey with Iternal. And there's a whole lot more that we're doing beyond that. But that's kind of the short Cliff Note version of the backstory.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. That's an awesome story. It's really cool to hear kind of any business. It starts with an idea and it starts with a passion, and then that usually turns into a very lucrative business model. The one thing you mentioned, though, when you were talking about how you got the idea, you saw kind of what bad use of technology. We saw there's technology for good, meaning it helps you do things and helps you do good things, and we don't want to use it for bad things like deep fakes and negative connotations. AI, we're on the forefront of AI right now, and currently for those watching, our business is really focused on B2B implementation of AI, not for consumer, but for corporations.
Mhm.
Fortune 1000, we call it. Trust is a big deal. Anytime you do something in a corporate environment that you're generating real revenue at scale, hundreds of millions of dollars, doing things for AI, like ChatGPT came out, and I talked to my friends, like, I think it kind of opened up to the world, to the possibility of what machines are able to do. And ironically, they're pretty creative. The bad thing is they're very creative, and you
Yep.
don't know when they're creating a bunch of noise versus truth.
Mhm.
So I'm throwing it over to you. Like, what do you see the industry heading with implementations of AI into businesses? Because it's not easy, is
Yeah.
what we're finding out.
Well, I think that, what you summed up the challenge really well. It's the creativity of it and the risk associated with it. It's been really interesting to speak with some of the, largest companies in the world at the leadership level and talk about the challenges that exist within the AI space. And there are a lot of challenges, and we're fortunate to be in a position where we're actually solving a lot of those challenges. But it's things that you wouldn't even really think of if you weren't in that every single day. It's things like, well, what happens if it says the wrong thing? And sometimes the implications of it saying the wrong thing could literally be hundreds of millions of dollars in lost revenue or in a lawsuit or something like that. And it's just operating at a scale that is pretty crazy to imagine, because that's a scale that, before, when we were just using human creativity, there wasn't that kind of large scale impact. A good analogy that I like to give is, let's say you send an email to the wrong person with a piece of content in it, like something that's marked company confidential, and you type in John Smith, and maybe you say John Smith at Dell.com, and you leave off an L by accident. Now, most of the large companies have bought the right domain names and the ones that are misspelled, so that kind of thing doesn't happen. But if you have a typo in that email address and there's something company confidential that, maybe it's a financial disclosure, something that really can't be publicly viewable for whatever reason, and that gets sent to the wrong email address, that could be a massive problem. But it's also a very localized issue, meaning you're not sending out this email to 500 different domain names that could be potentially misspelled. You're sending it out to one or two people whose email addresses could be potentially misspelled. And they're probably going to get it, and they're going to be, good citizens and partners or whatever, and they're going to delete the thing. Or, worst case scenario, it is something that is saved on their computer, or maybe if they're being malicious, they'll post it somewhere. But, there are a lot of steps that need to go from this is an accidental, unintentional content breach to it goes to the wrong person has malicious intent, to that person posts it somewhere, to somebody actually seeing that post and picking it up and syndicating it and having it go viral. Like there's a lot of gates in there just simply by the way that information is transmitted to protect against those things. And obviously we're not advocating for doing that, but the point is like there are protections in place just by natural way of connection. But the difference is in this AI world, the AI can have theoretical access to everything. And if that AI is leaked in some way, shape, or form, meaning the model weights are leaked or are accessed or are hacked, and you've actually encoded all of your institutional knowledge into that model, depending on the size of your AI model, it could be anywhere from 10 gigabytes to maybe 100 gigabytes, which in a single file or a collection of files, not that many, you're doing something that is, much more pinpoint and focused. And so if that file gets leaked, now it's not just what was in that one document that has the potential risk. If you trained or fine-tuned your model properly and encoded everything that your organization knows into it, you could theoretically ask that stolen model anything about your business and have it give you confidential information back about it. So it's completely changing the paradigm as it relates to how we think about security and how we need to think about gating access to these security components to instill a level of human error tolerance so that we're not in a situation where if one of these files or something gets leaked, it's suddenly now, an end situation for an AI. So, that's one of the reasons why we're really excited to be partnered with Dell, because the ability to own the hardware, own the control of those models, control the data, these are mission critical pieces of information that shouldn't be overlooked. And the good news is, I think everybody that I'm talking to is in a position where they really are taking it seriously and they're being cautious about it. On the other hand, though, these AI models are awesome. I use them every single day for personal research, for figuring out how to optimize my health. I'm not a programmer, so I can now use these applications to help me write, quick Python scripts. Nothing confidential or proprietary, but I've got 600 Word documents or SEC filings that I downloaded that I need to convert into text and pull out this one table that's the same in all of them. How do I do that? Right. And just being able to build things like that I could have never done without hiring one of my amazing engineers to do it. It's such a cool accelerator.
Yeah, I agree. You're kind of hitting on something too in the way I see AI being used in the modern workforce. There's two ways to use it as a co-agent, co-creator. Like in that case, and I use it as well too. I've used it even at Eternal to do some market research and other things. But you have to be careful with it because to your point is the AI always gives you an answer, always will give you an answer. However, you may want to fact check it sometimes because I've had false positives even in the market research I've done where you actually go, let me go check the work, and you look it up going, that's completely wrong. And I think that's okay. That's a good thing because you're keeping a human in the loop. And I've read some books about, what do we do with AI? You always want to maintain some level of agency. You want to outsource. You want to let the AI do things at scale as an agent, but you want to kind of keep that human in the loop just to make sure it doesn't go off the rails, at least right now. But one thing I think is a big challenge, and I know where corporations are looking to extract value, is putting like automating some of the front end workflows where you first interact with an AI. You come to a website, you are interacting with a bot. And right now, in many cases, that's a human, that's a me or you, that's someone talking to you. But a lot of companies are trying to put that as an AI agent. Um, that's where I think a lot of, the smaller companies are taking more risks because they have less to lose. But as you go up into the larger companies, you can lose a bunch of revenue if your AI chatbot isn't as good as a human or better.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
I'll,
mean,
I'll give you a really salient example. I was on a call with somebody earlier today, and they said that they just came back from a week-long vacation, and it was a total disaster because the airline lost the person's luggage, and they didn't get their luggage for the first 3 days. And the issue was they weren't using new AI for their chatbots. They were using the old AI. We're probably all very familiar with what that is. It's the ones that are clearly pre-canned responses where you have to answer like this decision tree logic of things just to maybe get what you want. But then you realize 3 answers in that, oh, you really should have picked this other tree to get what you want because now it's saying it can't help you and you have to like restart again. So his big issue was he was trying to, file a claim to get his luggage found, and this was all being done through a chat interface through one of these AIs. And he ended up spending the first 3 days of his 7-day vacation in a hotel room on the Wi-Fi trying to fill out this chat because you had to do it in certain stages and then it gets escalated and then you have to go through another one. And it was all AI chat. It wasn't human. And so he was like super pissed because his vacation was completely ruined and all of his friends were at the beach and he was stuck in the hotel room for the first 3 days. And so, that's a real world scenario of just a very unfortunately terrible customer experience that this airline, it's not their fault. This is brand new technology. So, this is now just starting to be even something that is possible to be adopted. But if that old legacy AI chatbot could have been turned into one of these new cutting edge generative AI chatbots, the opportunity for a better customer experience just goes through the roof because instead that person could have simply typed into the text box or spoken into their microphone exactly the issue that they were having in great detail. The generative AI could analyze that, understand if there's anything in that synopsis that was missing for them to fill out the form. That form could then be fully populated. The Gen AI could then determine whether or not follow-up questions need to be asked. And probably within one interaction or maybe 2 interactions at most, you're at a point where that entire customer experience ticket could be captured, documented, and put through the queue versus him having to spend 3 days on that issue. So, and of course, now he's probably not going to fly that airline for a really long time. And it has absolutely nothing to do with anything other than the fact that it was a bad customer experience through a chatbot.
And it doesn't matter if that's a human experience. So it makes a difference. That bot, that I would argue says it's not the airline's fault. It is their fault. That's who they choose to represent their company. And at the end of the day, you have to be careful about who you hire, who you employ, and that includes your generative AI. I mean, because you are putting an experience in front of your trusted and most valued resource, which is your customer, and that's a less than experience. You know what? I may want to fly a different airline, and that's what's going to happen. So that's why it's very careful that when companies are using AI, they're using it in the right places. And we're so enamored to jump on the latest bandwagon or like, oh, this is possible. I want some Gen AI here. I want some Gen AI there. But, crawl, walk, run, just because it can do things, you got to make sure it's operating in the right fashion that represents your brand and your culture.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that I'm seeing real world is that AI, while it's going fast, it is evolving fast, and it's going to, within 5 years from now, it'll be so much better than it is today. I still think it's very, very critical to, I would say crawl, walk, and then run versus some of these companies are just trying to deploy the latest, coolest thing too fast and they get burned by it. And it's not that they get burned by it, but their customers are being burned by it.
Well, and I think that that's kind of an interesting take on why I think we're being really successful with the customers today is because we have a happy medium between cutting edge and enterprise scale, right? It's
Explain that
taking
a little bit. I think that is a key point.
Yeah,
Expound.
so I think that we move very fast as an organization, and we are able to be very fortunate in staying up with the latest developments literally on a daily basis as it relates to the new AI innovations that are coming out. But I think that, big kudos to my engineering team for the work that they've done on building a true enterprise grade platform. And we really started from the ground up, building and designing this architecture in such a way that we could actually rapidly iterate these different technologies into the platform and scale it out in a way that doesn't create complexity and feature bloat. A lot of people talk about a microservices architecture, which for the non-technical people who may be watching this, microservices basically mean you break down your application into multiple different components that can talk to each other. And if one of them goes down, then you lose that feature capability, but everything else that doesn't rely on that still works. It makes your code base smaller and more efficient and more scalable and many other benefits as well. But that same kind of approach, we've actually gone one step further and taken microservices architecture and turned it into a micro application architecture. So instead of having one big monolithic application that everybody logs into, where bloat and complexity kind of become the norm. Not going to mention any specifics, but there are a lot of, if you look at any of the big software providers out there, they pretty much all have one big monolithic solution. There are some that are now starting to break those things apart, but we designed ours from day one as being separatable. So we have an application that's designed just for RFPs. We have one that's designed just for building personalized marketing materials and workflows and things like that. We have one that's just designed for analyzing documents with large language models. We have one for prioritization that sits as a layer on top of your IT service management tool. And they're all separated. They're fully isolated, but they're also interconnected when they need to be. So we have an application that's designed just for managing the large language models. And we've got like 10 or 15 different apps that all talk to that one app. So that obviously becomes something that's mission critical, but because they're separated out, it allows you to have a lot more flexibility in your development velocity, because we can actually have customers that come to us and say, hey, I've got this really cool use case. I don't think you're doing this anywhere else, but we'd really like you to build this for us. And we can look at it and we can say, that's an awesome idea. I know 7 other customers that would also want that. We're going to turn that into a formal product. And we build that as a micro application. Alternatively, we could look at it. We could say something like, this is a really cool idea. Nobody else wants to buy it, but we'll build it for you as a micro application because A, we can, and B, it's not going to impact any of the design or product or capability decisions that any of our other customers have. So when you extend that kind of concept to the rapidly evolving space that we're in now with generative AI and really anything that comes after this, there's an ability to be able to stand up these various applications that are using that latest and greatest new technology in a way that's not going to impact the rest of our enterprise solutions. And so that gives our enterprise customers an entry point into learning and experimenting and using in production these AI capabilities that otherwise, you'd have to spend 6 months designing how you're going to integrate it into your 10-year-old application. That if something goes down, it's going to cause massive user pains and customer risk and attrition. Like we've eliminated all that because you say, okay, if you want this new application turned on, great, it's eternal.ai / whatever the application name is. And if you want it and you want to play with it, you go to that link. If you don't, it's not going to impact anything. And so that's been a really cool way of allowing our customers to dip their toe into this new space. And I mean, the results that we're seeing so far are just incredible. The feedback has been great because it's production ready AI today without the risks associated with how is this going to impact everything else that I'm doing on a daily basis.
I think that's critical. And I think it's also something fairly unique in the marketplace when you look out into the landscape of thousands of AI startups and people getting in, or companies doing AI development projects inside their IT shops. The fact that you have the ability to offer almost like a quick uh, prototyping environment to safely use AI at scale in an enterprise framework with zero trust, I think is undervalued. And we're learning from our customers. Sometimes they'll have an idea like, "What's a great product?" or "That's a really good idea just for you," and be able to offer that framework for them is invaluable.
Yeah.
And we're learning so much from our customers because the beauty of AI, and we've talked about this, it can be used everywhere. I mean, like the question is like, where can it not be used? Well, in theory, it can be applied to cross domains. It can be applied to your marketing. It can be applied to your sales. It can be applied to your engineering. It can be applied to your finance. And so, because their uses are so vast, I think a lot of people struggle like, where do I start?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get started? And the ability to offer them like, hey, we can spin up an environment for you for your marketing group or for your sales organization. Just experiment and try it out. Kick the tires a little bit safely in a zero trust environment and see if you really get benefit from it. We call it that a proof of value. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you may want to actually implement it, but having that ability to kind of test and learn before you make a big bet and go all in, I think that's something that's very valuable that Eternal offers to the customer set.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up the zero trust component, because I think that that's also a unique thing that we're doing in the market. There may be some other companies that are
Yeah.
starting to think this way now. Dell's been making a big push with zero trust for the last couple of years. There are a few others out there, but it's still pretty nascent in terms of how you secure applications. But one of the interesting things that we're seeing in that space that's something I'm very proud of my team for embracing is there are a lot of cool AI startups, but they cannot pass the enterprise IT security requirements. And that's hindering the enterprise's ability to adopt these new cutting edge technologies because they don't have that security.
John, I'm going to pause you right there. That's the first thing. So yes, I was a former customer. First thing I did when I'm working with as much as I liked you and I liked your technology and use case, I was thinking, man, this is never going to get past IT. But I said, but I wanted to try. So I threw you to the IT group. I'm like going, I'll see you in a year. I mean, I was joking, but like, it just takes forever to pass like
Yeah.
serious
And,
IT
and
audits.
then you were pleasantly surprised when we were back 2 weeks
I
later.
was shocked, actually. I was like, like, no, you're like the first company I've worked with at a small scale that actually just like, we're done. And IT's like, no, they're good. That to me also was another kind of in the back of my mind going, oh, wow, these people know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Just true story. And the IT department it just passed it. And we're even working with, I would say, even more stringent
Yeah. Financial
areas.
services.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have some of the most strict rules in the industry.
Yeah. Well, and
And
that's a big compliment to Steve, our CTO, because he came from working in the computer security space. So of course that helped in a big way as we were looking at how the overall business model as well as the enterprise architecture was set up. But I think that the other cool thing, going back to the whole concept of the micro applications, the zero trust, the security, and the cutting edge nature of AI, we're in a unique position to be able to bring these new innovative emerging technologies onto this platform in a way where you can actually use them and you can experiment with them with all of the checkboxes around that enterprise security. I mean, like you said, there aren't too many companies that can pass those enterprise security audits in like a couple weeks with no follow-up questions. Now, not saying they're all going to be that way. I don't want to jinx it, but like,
but
that's what it's been. And even to the point on the financial services, right? It's the same thing. We've got the 200 plus most common questions documented, the 30 pages of application architecture overview about every single detail of how the system is managed and maintained and the customer data is protected. And, that's what the enterprise expects. And that was certainly a learning experience for me going through that. I had some amazing guidance and mentorship from a number of people around how to think in that true enterprise space. But there are a lot of companies out there who are building cool things that just don't have any exposure or knowledge into that even being a requirement. And that kind of ties us back to the question and commentary that you gave at the very beginning, which is just the implications of doing this in the wrong way can be hundreds of millions of dollars in loss. So it's an interesting space and time to be in, but those who are, ready to experiment, it's delivering some really good results.
And I think that's the kind of one of the key takeaways that you've got to, we all know AI is a force function change. We talk about these massive changes, whether it was, the advent of the microprocessor computer, advent of the internet. This is another one. This is, networked intelligence, for the lack of a better term, that we all have access to. And it's going to democratize our access to very complex thinking algorithms. So every company in the world, they all are going into this world head first because they have to, just to maintain a competitive advantage. But I think the ability to offer a safe platform to test and experiment without having to do a science project internally is invaluable. And I think we're just at the start of seeing how our customers want to use this technology and implement it. And every customer we interact with has a different potential approach. Well, one thing I'll ask you, and we'll kind of bring this one to a close, and we'll continue the conversation in future episodes. But as you're sitting here as the head of an AI startup that's gotten some very serious traction, what do you, if you could put your crystal ball on, what do you see it heading in the next 2 years? Like, where do you see is there a killer use case, killer application? As you sit up and think about AI at night, are you thinking of, oh my gosh, this is where it's heading? Where do you see it going?
So there are a couple thoughts that I have around that. The first one would be time more than anything else. Giving people back time or allowing them to reallocate the time that they have. When we started this conversation today, we talked about how I'm using AI to help me write Python scripts. Yeah. That's something that I could definitely sit down and teach myself how to do that, but it's not something that is super exciting to me. Like, I love the outcome, but the whole coding thing has always been something that has just been a little bit painful for me. But now I can actually, through the AI, have it do something for me so that I can actually do the part that I really enjoy, which is, doing the whole data science, number analysis, trying to connect pieces and dots together that, I couldn't have ever done at the scale that I'm doing now if it wasn't for the AI assist or having a really great, technical engineer that I could just pick up the phone anytime I needed something saying, hey, can you build this for me? So I think that, empowering people to lean into the things that they're really good at and augment the skill deficiencies, like what I have from a technical coding perspective. I can understand the architecture. I can describe what I want. I can, say I want this as the input, this is the output. But that middle step, that can be taken care of for me by the AI. And it just makes me so much more efficient in what I'm able to do. And I think that's really cool and really fun. But I think also, in addition to that, there are considerations and discussions that are being had now and I'm going to pose a question to you for a challenge question. It's kind of fun. I think about this pretty frequently. So the question is, if we wind the clock back to, let's just say, the mid 1800s, when music recordings were just starting to become a thing. It was the late 1800s where the phonograph, I think, was created, and shortly thereafter we started getting things like photography and then eventually film. So the challenge question that I pose to you is, back then, if you wanted to witness a performance, whether that was a play or it was a music rendition, those had to be occurring in real time, live. There was no recording and playback capability. So the question is it genuine to listen to a song on your phone? Is it genuine to listen to this recording after the fact? Is it genuine to watch a movie, because those are all digital recreations. They're ones and zeros, or back in the day, it was a physical thing, a film strip that was playing something that no longer is within time. It's not current, right? It's in the past. So how genuine is that compared to a digital human that you're speaking to in real time, or a digital version of me or of you that exhibits the same characteristics, the same traits, but is making up whatever the response is on the fly, or is a deep fake of me that's in a video versus me sitting down in front of the camera and actually recording something. And I don't have a good answer for that. You may not have a good answer for that either, but it's very interesting, because when you compare that to, playing back just a simple, song, pick your favorite song from your favorite band and you play that on your phone. How genuine is that as something that isn't in real time? So,
Well, I love listening to music, but I also love going to listen to music played live as well. And so I think they both have their places in it to actually see humans create and to watch, the artistry live is an experience. But I also love the fact I can just roll up one of the songs that moves me on my iPhone and listen to it again and again and again. And sometimes by hearing that recorded moment, you relive that in-person moment that you saw. The one thing I think you said about AI is I agree. If we do it right, if we do it right in the industry right, we will free up more time for us. We also lower the bar of what's possible. Meaning, there's one thing to want to, to build something really cool that requires coding, and you got to go find a coder. But now with AI, to your point, that for a very intelligent or a person who has an idea to build something, the AIs can make that world come to reality now. That's amazing. And we know the other thing I think huge about AI is think about the education system. I mean, the democratization of knowledge. And it's one thing to read knowledge, and like I love reading, but I don't know if you've ever done this, but you can ask an AI to teach you to code, and it's a great teacher. So
mhm.
I do think that the ability to have time back or quality time in this world of digital noise is going to be an amazing experience. And I do think I also posit this one as something I've thought about. Is AI going to make us kind of come back to humanity a little bit? Meaning we spend so much time, if like my children living on their devices, I'm thinking maybe if they can come up for air a little bit and interact with AI a little bit more like a human, have a conversation, talk to it, it may help us restore a little bit of the humanity we lost in the digital age. Because I do think, um, the more we can make our machines a little bit more human, that's not a bad thing.
Well, we'll see about that. That'll be the topic for our next one, because I have
As
some
long
thoughts
as
on
it's
that one.
not, as long as we're not talking for those Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator, like a good human, like a one that we like.
Yeah.
We if we can shape the AI to be our best friend, I think we'll be in good shape. But it's definitely a world that's going fast. And as I told my children who are getting ready to go to school and like, Dad, what do I study? I'm like, just learn how to learn,
Mhm.
because right now the AI is going to open up a world of possibility, whether you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a plumber. I mean, no matter what you choose, we are going to be coexisting with an AI from now on. That's
Yep.
not going to change.
All right, so that's the next
Oh,
podcast topic, Ethan. We're going to talk about that learning, and we're going to talk about how much friendship you should have with your AI.